This Jin Wei is clearly super strong but excessively watery. Introduction. After a dream, the world of rivers and lakes is no longer just two words in the book, but a living world presented in front of Lu Hanjiang. With a passionate passion for the martial arts world, Lu Hanjiang worked hard to pass an exam in a certain department of the imperial court and became a proud civil servant. As time goes by, 10 years have passed. 24-year-old Lu Hanjiang lives a fishing life every day, drinking tea and paddling to and from work. When he is about to lose interest in the Jianhu suddenly becomes lively. Chapter 1. Genie Guard. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. At night, during curfew, the city of Yunzhou was ablaze with flames and bustling with people and horses. A person who woke up from a dream couldn't help but pry open the door and look out. Looking up was a bright long sword, with gilded and silver patterns that exuded a chill in the cold moonlight. The knight on horseback was covered in ink, and the four-clawed flying fish pattern on his robe was not angry or arrogant. When he saw someone doing something good, he drank it and said, "The royal guards are in business, and idle people are not allowed to peep." Fearful of its potential, everyone in the city closed their doors tightly and dared not explore anything further. In the north of Yunzhou city, for nights in front of the Qi family courtyard guard a man dressed in a silver flying fish suit. 5 of them ride on horseback, occasionally saying a few words. Countless school captains and warriors around, each with their swords drawn, remain silent and wait for dispatch. Not long after, a man in a black flying fish suit came out of the gate. His face was cold and his eyebrows were frosty, which made people feel uncomfortable looking at him. "Master Qianhu, all members of the Qi family in Yunzhou city have been apprehended here." Well, the man cleared his throat immediately, his expression still indifferent, and said, "Take the person back to the capital, this matter is over. Qin Zongqi, please work hard to come. I humbly accept orders." The cold-faced man bowed and bowed, his lowered eyebrows and eyes making it difficult to see his expression at this moment. The silver-clad man nodded slightly, grabbed the horse rope and turned around, while the surrounding knights and captain warriors moved in unison. The cold-faced man only stood up when the sound of the crowd and horses gradually faded away. His surname is Qin, and his individual name is EU. He has been in the Genie Guard for 5 years and has extraordinary skills. He usually does not like socializing, but fortunately, he has 2 brothers to support him. Now, he has been promoted to the position of General Flag. In silence, 2 people dressed in the same ink robe approached, with a slightly immature face on the left. He spoke in a dissatisfied tone, "Brother Qin, those surnamed Lu like to show off. We don't pay attention to him." A middle-aged man with a capable appearance on the right said in a deep voice, "Sir, there are rumors that the Qi family once sent their children to Huashan to learn arts, but I don't know if it's true or false." Qin Yu narrowed his eyes slightly and said thoughtfully, "Wind comes from nowhere, it's not for no reason. It may take some effort to escort the Qi family to the capital all the way. Gao, go and call all the brothers." "Understood," Gao Ming replied. As he was older than the 2 of them, he usually referred to him as Lao Gao, and currently holds the small flag of the royal guards. "Humph, the person surnamed Lu is greedy for life and afraid of death. He slipped away first and let us deal with these troubles." "Ah Jin," Qin Yu shook his head at him, gesturing for him to stop here. He raised his hand and patted his shoulder. "It's always like this, don't worry, let's go." Tang Jin is a descendant of his Qin Yu. He has good martial arts skills, but he is a bit impatient in his work, which always makes people feel uneasy. Fortunately, the 3 brothers support each other, so there is no big deal. The conversation was divided into 2 parts, and on this side, the association between the Qi family and Huashan was also discussed within the guard house. "Lord Lu, the rumor about having a nose and eyes makes me worried about my lowly position." "What are you worried about?" the man in the silver robe joked. "The Qi family has violated national laws. Is it possible that the Huashan sect still dares to come to the genie guard to demand people? The people around them all agreed and laughed. Even the questioner smiled and said, of course, Huashan wouldn't dare to oppose the court, but the 5 sacred mountains are united. If they join forces, it would be a big trouble. The 5 sacred sword sect has been divided, and merged for many years. It has not formed a climate, and it is a confrontation between the disciples of Ihua Mountain and the royal guards. If the Qi family had this ability, they would not have been raided. Your Highness is insightful, but even if they dare to come, our Lord Lu's name, with the weight of the 3 characters Lu Hanjiang, even if these great sects like Shaolin and Wudang come, they must give him some face. Don't be afraid of his 5 sacred mountains. Wang Baihu has said it too much, but it's just using the reputation of Commander Meng. Your Highness is humble, but I humbly think that those individuals may not dare to take action on the surface. However, the journey from Yunzhou to the capital is far away, and if there is no guarantee, some people will secretly play some moves. The 1,000 household lords' strong martial arts are naturally safe, but if Qin Zongqi accidentally escapes 1 or 2 criminals, it will not look good on the face of the big people. Upon hearing this, Lu Hanjiang was taken aback for a moment, then laughed and cursed, "You're so good, Wang Yan. You're cursing me harshly around the corner. I dare not humble myself." Despite hearing that Lu Hanjiang's words were mostly joking, Wang Yan quickly stood up and saluted. Lu Hanjiang waved his hand casually and said, "Well, after all, this is your Wang Baihu's territory. Since your old Wang has spoken up, you need to give him face." The court established the Jin Wei, with most households at the level of 1,000 stationed in the capital. In remote places like Yunzhou, although there are also Jin Wei stationed, they are only at the level of 100 households. There were a total of 14 people in 1,000 households, while there were several in 100 households, but Wang Yan could not simply treat them as being able to garrison in one state. "Your Excellency, you are despicable." Upon hearing Lu Hanjiang's teasing, Wang Yan arched his hands repeatedly. After another round of polite praise, Wang Yan led several general flags and small flags towards the Qi family courtyard. This case involved a lot, saving them many nightmares. They were leaving tonight. After Wang Yan and his group left, all that remained in the room were the people and horses brought by Lu Hanjiang from the capital. "Sir," one of them lowered his voice and said, "Wang Baihu has been stationed in Yunzhou for many years. His filial piety usually follows the rules, and he doesn't see anyone he is particularly close to. Why did he suddenly start to look at Qin Yu? Is it not the Nanjun governor?" Another person said, "I don't think so. Although this matter belongs to our northern division, it is indeed the path of the southern division." After hearing this, the person felt reasonable, but upon closer reflection, he also had some doubts. But after all, Qin Yu. Alright, Yu reading www.uukangshu.net, Lu Hanjiang raised his hand and stopped everyone's discussion. "This matter ends here. Don't bring it up to anyone in the future. We still have to hurry tomorrow. You all go down. I resign from my humble position." Everyone retreated one by one, and the 2 people who stayed last were the ones we had just discussed in the room. They were both the main flags, gesturing to each other and hanging at the end. After leaving the courtyard, one of the people whispered, "What's the origin of this Wang Yan? It doesn't seem like he was arranged by the court." The other person replied, "There's no news in the palace either. You can find an opportunity to explore his background tomorrow." Okay. After the next sound, the 2 separated and calmly integrated into the others. After asking everyone to leave, Lu Hanjiang returned to the guest room and brewed a pot of tea, filling a cup. "Sir," a soft voice came from outside the door, and the person who came was 100 households who had just been in the room, named Bian Guang, a confidant of Lu Hanjiang. "Come in, sit down." Lu Hanjiang pushed the tea to the opposite seat, and the person bowed when he saw it. "Mr. Xie," Bian Guang said as he filled his cup with tea, Wang Yan is a bit strange. He's not someone who was planted above, and he doesn't even look like he was planted in the court. Should we humbly investigate his background? No need, this matter is no longer related to us. Just keep an eye on those two people. I understand. Bian Guang nodded and saw that Lu Hanjiang had filled him with another cup of tea. He hurriedly said, "Your Excellency, drink first." "Drink it, I'm afraid I won't be able to sleep." "Thank you, Lord." Bian Guang finished drinking and bowed before leaving the room. Lu Hanjiang undressed and sat by the bed, not paying much attention to what Bian Guang had just said. With Qin Yu's background configuration in the protagonist's script, what else is impossible? Chapter 2. The Jianghu in the book. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If you have to say it, it's all a story from a long time ago. At that time, his name was not Lu Hanjiang, and he didn't even have the surname Lu. Just like dreaming, when I came to my senses, I had already become a 10-year-old Lu Hanjiang. The memories of 2 lifetimes are like a paste, unable to distinguish whether he dreamed of becoming Lu Hanjiang or whether his so-called past life was just a dream of Lu Hanjiang. During that period, he, who had undergone a great change in temperament, was full of curiosity about everything around him. Lu Hanjiang did not like the unconventional family culture and was more interested in this world that was different from any dynasty in his memory. Here are the golden titles of scholars, the joys and sorrows of people in the martial arts world, the prophecies of eternal prosperity in the court, and the wild rumors of unifying the martial arts world. He originally wanted to learn from the person in that book, wielding swords and martial arts skills one by one, and earning the title of the world's greatest hero, but he was immediately smitten by the cold reality. Because he didn't know, and it wasn't written in the book, that even the great hero had to eat. They said that even a penny would defeat a hero, and the great hero was no exception. The Lu family, where Lu Hanjiang is located, is also considered a large clan with thousands of children. The clan leader, Lu Yannian, was only 50 years old and became the Minister of Rites. Perhaps he will endure for a few more years and have a chance to enter the cabinet. With such a family background, Lu Hanjiang naturally had no worries about food and clothing since childhood, but it was only limited to this. He was not the main branch of the family, and he had no responsibility to bear, but also could not receive any family property. Lu Hanjiang's parents in this generation were ordinary people in the clan, and they usually had a job to handle some common affairs. Their lives were relatively ordinary. For such a life, Lu Hanjiang cannot be dissatisfied, but he can't help but want to see this world like a story in a book. In this world where crossing the river with a reed is not a legend, the martial arts sects are a considerable force, and even the imperial court has to deal with them with caution, setting up the royal guards to confront them. Yes, the royal guards in this world are not only responsible for supervising the court officials, but also for dealing with the power of the martial arts world. On the surface, the royal guards possess the strongest strength. If they confront each other one by one, they can overpower the major sects, but they cannot withstand the coexistence of various heroes. However, the royal guards belong to the imperial court and are fundamentally different from the martial arts sections. They are naturally in a position independent of the 2 realms of the martial arts world. The martial arts sects compete with each other, and the royal guards do not participate. Similarly, when the royal guards handle affairs, major sects also open convenient doors to achieve a subtle balance. Although the power of the martial arts sects is so strong that they can even compete with the court, for people like Lu Hanjiang who come from a wealthy family, the distance between the martial arts and the temple is still too far. Since childhood, I have been studying at home, studying the sages of Confucius and Mencius, and being loyal to the emperor and loving the country. In the blink of an eye, it has become a legend in the mouths of storytellers in tea houses. Lu Hanjiang has been studying at home for 4 years, but he can't continue studying anymore. Perhaps it's because he has too many unconventional things in his mind. He told his parents about his desire to venture into the martial arts world, which surprised and puzzled them. As a result, he was naturally rejected, so Lu Hanjiang went to find several other elders he knew well in his daily life, most of whom were his uncles, and their reactions were consistent with those of his father and mother. Even this incident eventually reached the ears of the family elders, which made them feel very puzzled. Because in general, it is not expected that all disciples of the Lu family will become successful. There are many Lu family members who cannot continue their studies, but these people either end up living aimlessly or completely indulging themselves as playboys. The former doesn't matter. The Lu family doesn't support those who eat idle food, and they just give you food to eat while working. Being willing to fall from grace can only be said that everyone has their own aspirations and is driven out. As for the latter, it doesn't matter much. The Lu family has considerable influence in the local area, and there are also people in the court. Coupled with strict family education, they confine the dandy in their own territory. Even if something really happens, they can still hold it back. Basically, these aristocratic families in the court are similar to the Lu family. Apart from scholars, they produce only these two types. Few aristocratic sons in the court would want to venture into the martial arts world. Because their educational model is like this, learning civil and martial arts, and being a good match for the imperial family, it is rare to see people like Lu Hanjiang who are determined to see how big the world really is. However, there are exceptions, such as the fact that the imperial family has a connection with a certain martial arts sect, whether it is ancestral or business, and has formed such a fate. Some aristocratic families will send disciples to the sect to pay their respects. On the one hand, it is to enhance the relationship between the two sides, and on the other hand, it is also to provide some assistance to the family. But this is ultimately a minority, because there is an unwritten rule between the royal guards and the martial arts sects, and both sides should not interfere with each other in principle. Therefore, even if some have crossed the line of the sect, they will not be easily exposed. Just like the Qi family, even if there are children in the family who have joined the Huashan sect, the royal guards will not show mercy when robbing the family. Everyone takes a step back, and the royal guards will no longer be completely eradicated. The Qi family's Huashan disciples should not think of revenge. Speaking of Lu Hanjiang, his idea was definitely not approved by the family in the end. After all, although the Lu family has money, power, and connections, they really have no connection with the martial arts sections. But this endless event has brought Lu Hanjiang another choice. Perhaps this matter is indeed enough as a topic for discussion. Even Lord Lu, the Minister of Personnel, was alarmed. The next development can be said to be bizarre. Minister Lu recommended Lu Hanjiang to the royal guards. Although they may not share the same worldview, the royal guards and court officials here cannot be said to be incompatible, at least they are also strangers. After all, half of the responsibility of the royal guards is to supervise the officials. If you have a good relationship with them, it is not suitable. If your relationship is bad, it is purely to cause trouble for yourself, not far or near, just right. I couldn't tell that Lu Shangshu had thick eyebrows and big eyes, but secretly he was still flirting with the commander of the royal guards. However, Lu Hanjiang felt it was appropriate because the other half of the responsibility of the royal guards was to deal with the martial arts sects, which indirectly achieved his goal of transitioning from a martial arts hero to a court hawk dog. So at the age of 14, Lu Hanjiang joined the royal guards, relying on strong connections and fists. In just 10 years, he rose from the small flag of the royal guards to the current 1,000 households of the royal guards. Perhaps even Lu Shangshu himself did not expect that Lu Hanjiang, who was casually recommended, could climb to the position of Qianhu. On the one hand, the backstage was strong enough, and on the other hand, his fists were indeed not weak. After all, the royal guards are meant to benchmark against the major sects in the martial arts world. You can go through any situation below 1,000 households, as long as you can get by. If you have more than 1,000 households, you need to take them out to support your reputation. It's really not enough without two brushes. Speaking of the past decade of genie health, it has also made Lu Hanjiang's admiration for the world of martial arts go from his initial longing for beauty, from reading books at www.yuukangshu.net to now being disgusted by 2 readings. There are indeed people with high martial arts skills. Shaolin Master Physics Chao-Du punches and Buddha, Wudang Taoist and Peace Persuasion swords and holes, and there is not a clear concept of the classification of experts in the martial arts world. It's just that entering the mainstream is not entering the mainstream. Simply put, anyone who can be called out in public is a first-class expert. Over the past decade, Lu Hanjiang has seen many martial arts masters to some extent, and even himself has gained a considerable reputation in the martial arts world. At the end of the day, wandering in the martial arts world relies on both fists and blows. Generally, those who reach the top are either righteous leaders or demonic giants, as well as those who sweep the floor and cultivate eagles. Perhaps now there is also a tea drinker, which is Lu Hanjiang himself. Yes, although Lu Hanjiang has only been around for 10 years, he has almost made it to the end. Starting from his initial longing for the martial arts world, Lu Hanjiang was naturally not unprepared. If he had no strength to bind himself, it would be common for him to win or lose as soon as he left the door. Great Xia, please start over again. When Lu Hanjiang first arrived in this world, he felt as if something had been added to his mind. Close your eyes, concentrate and calm your breath, and you will feel a huge sundial. At the hour of the hour of the hour and the hour of the hour, the sundial will have special expressions. During these 2 hours of meditation on the sundial, Lu Hanjiang could notice a faint glow appearing on the outer circle of the sundial, gradually increasing. Every time the faint light grew, Lu Hanjiang could feel his own changes, his strength grew stronger, his insight became more and more acute, and so on. For the past decade, Lu Hanjiang has been repeating this process day after day. Although his official position is no more than that of 1,000 households of the royal guards, he feels that if he were to swing his fist, now he would be calling the abbot of Shaolin Temple over, which would be to swing his arm. Chapter 3. Ambush in Bamboo Forest. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. At the age of 24, Lu Hanjiang saw his life 50 years later and even started living ahead of schedule. At dawn, he woke up, meditated on the sundial, had breakfast, and Lu Hanjiang pushed open the door. The brothers of the royal guards had already arrived. It's all the elderly members of the Genie Guard who came from the capital with Lu Hanjiang. They naturally understand the daily routine of this 1,000 household master, and no one would feel uncomfortable in such a place. They all came outside early to wait. 1,000 households, sir. Everyone bowed to Lu Hanjiang one after another. Well, he casually glanced at the crowd and saw that nothing was missing. Lu Hanjiang strode away, and there were already horses prepared by someone at the gate of the courtyard. He crossed over and mounted the horses, casually asking, "Where has the Qin general flag gone?" After some eye contact among the people behind, one of them stepped forward and said, "I just received the post office report. Qin Zongqi has escorted the prisoner through the clouds." In the clouds, it will take some time to reach the capital, Lu Hanjiang roughly calculated before ignoring it. He turned around and called on everyone to mount his horse. "Let's take the small road and go back to report." Yes. The Qi family case involved a whole family, and the higher authorities attached great importance to it. That's why Lu Hanjiang, 1,000 households, was sent to intervene. Although he has been young and old for the past 10 years, he has already become a veteran, but the importance and urgency can still be distinguished. After all, even the harshly scolded Chao Tangyingo is better than changing careers and becoming a bandit. The main reason why he, as 1,000 households, had to make this trip was because of another person, who was his subordinate, Qin Yu. At first, seeing his face as a celestial and solitary star, Lu Hanjiang knew that this guy was not easy. The fact is not bad as he guessed. Qin Yu's background is not simple. He used the network he had accumulated over the past 10 years and only found out that Qin Yu's mother was one of the 3 major aristocratic families in the martial arts world, a young lady from the Huangfu family. As for who Qin Yu's father is, Lu Hanjiang couldn't find out, but no matter what, he wouldn't be an ordinary person. On this mission, escorting the Qi family to the capital, Lu Hanjiang had secretly received the message from the superior that someone would ambush Qin Yu halfway, so Lu Hanjiang naturally took himself out with ease. Although I don't know who started it, if you want to move the team of the royal guards, you probably won't be some petty thief. If the imperial family takes action, the traces are too heavy and it's not easy to end. Therefore, no matter who the mastermind is, the person who takes action must still be selected in the martial arts world. There are not many in the martial arts world who have the ability to challenge the royal guards. Thinking about it this way, if Qin Yu died, he would only bear the responsibility of not knowing anyone. With the presence of Minister Lu, it would not make him too embarrassed. If Qin Yu didn't die like this, then Lu Hanjiang might have been the son of some kind of luck. It's hard to say that in a few years, he will really change his profession and become a bandit. Along the way, he was lost in thought, but suddenly realized that the atmosphere around him was not right. Looking up, Lu Hanjiang saw half-withered and not yellow bamboo leaves covering his head, and his horse's hooves galloping on them. The bamboo leaves were floating, and there seemed to be a noisy sound of the wind mixed in his ears. Sigh. Lu Hanjiang suddenly grabbed the horse rope and raised his hand to signal the stop of the team behind him. The 2 main flags immediately drove their horses forward, blocking his left and right, while the other small flags scattered, holding rope knives and unsheathing them, to guard the surroundings. At the same time, Bian Guang from behind rode forward and shouted loudly towards the depths of the bamboo forest, "What kind of person is sneaky? Come out." The answer to him was a hint of coldness exposed around him, causing Bian Guang's pupils to suddenly contract and say, "Crossbow arrow." Whoosh whoosh. The raindrops of crossbows and arrows caught everyone off guard. You should know that this thing is controlled by the court. As the saying goes, there is no fish in the water, and there is a certain circulation in the black market. However, it is a bit surprising to be able to gather such a quantity of crossbows and arrows. Although the other party was carefully ambushed, the royal guards were not just paper tigers. After a round of arrow rain, everyone showed their strengths, and except for an unlucky little flag shot to death, the others were not in any way affected. "Sir." Holding an arrow in his hand, Bian Guang looked at Lu Hanjiang and waited for his command. "Let's go." Lu Hanjiang rushed forward ahead. The enemy was dark and we were clear. It was unwise to stay in place and fight with crossbows and arrows, so it was better to take the initiative to attack. As for fleeing back, Lu Hanjiang dares to guarantee that there will be much more ambushes behind them than before. A team of more than 10 people once again started to move and ran towards the depths of the bamboo forest. Suddenly, a large net was cast in the air. Without saying a word, Bian Guang wielded his embroidered spring knife and slashed it repeatedly. The swords flew out, destroying all the traps set ahead. The person who cultivates inner martial arts has far more senses than ordinary people. While flying, Bian Guang can still capture the sound of crossbows and arrows being loaded. He glanced at the figures moving in the dense forests on both sides and grabbed the horse rope, saying, "Sir, let's go first." Lu Hanjiang was also polite, nodding at him and fiercely whipping his horse whip, cutting off dust all the way. The sound of fighting gradually rose from behind, and Lu Hanjiang didn't turn his head. Suddenly, he heard a clear sound of sword energy beside him. He drew out his embroidered spring sword from his waist and rushed forward. In an instant, the lightning and fire stones shook the blade, and it was cut off by his waist. Although the embroidered spring knife is a product produced by the imperial court, its quality and workmanship are all top-notch. Ordinary swords, guns, and sticks, let alone cut them off, cannot even make a notch. This sword is so sharp, what idea is so hard? Lu Hanjiang glanced in surprise at the black-robed swordsman who had attacked him. He was wearing a hood and couldn't see the whole picture. After a brief confrontation, Lu Hanjiang continued to gallop forward on horseback. The swordsman missed a single move and did not strike his sword again. He stood still, watching Lu Hanjiang's figure disappear into the bamboo forest. Yu reading www.yuyukangshu.net. The other black-robed man who walked out from behind glanced in the direction of landing on the Han River and leaving, and looked at the swordsman. Did you let him go? No. The swordsman responded absent-mindedly, lowering his head and looking steadily at the long sword in his hand. Following the swordsman's gaze, the black-robed man's gaze shifted downwards and unexpectedly saw a crack embedded in more than half of the sword body. He couldn't help but be shocked and said, "Well, how could this happen? Is it possible that Lu Hanjiang also hit a divine weapon? His sword has broken." The swordsman leaned down and observed the half-cut blade that landed on the ground. It's indeed a good embroidered spring blade. I can't believe it. The black-robed man shook his head and sighed. It's actually the royal guards. There are rumors in the martial arts world, and Lu Hanjiang's martial arts are incredibly exquisite. I never expected that his internal strength would also be so profound. Not only his internal skills, I'm afraid his swordsmanship is also not weak, the swordsman said solemnly. The knife he just made may seem ordinary, but it's not just his internal skills that can leave marks on this Qin Feng sword with an ordinary embroidered spring blade. As he spoke, the swordsman lowered his head somewhat dejectedly and said, "If it weren't for the sharpness of the weapons, I'm afraid I would have been defeated." Upon hearing this, the black-robed man smiled and advised, "Don't worry too much. Lu Hanjiang looks like a young man, but in fact, the scouts have found that he is almost 40 years old this year. He has been pretending for so many years to hide his strength. You are only 30 now, so losing to such an old fox is not a shame. Ultimately, his skills are inferior to those of others." The swordsman sheathed his sword and threw it to the black-robed man, asking, "How are you doing on your end?" The black-robed man took over Qin Feng and said nonchalantly, "We've all gone. Kill a few small flags, it's better than nothing." Chapter 4. Visitors from the capital. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Although the royal guards all have embroidered spring swords bestowed upon them by the emperor, if they really want to fight, they will still be able to use the 18 types of weapons. Lu Hanjiang comes from the Lu family and naturally does not have any inherited martial arts. Since joining the royal guards, he has learned some rare and ordinary foreign martial arts. If you only learn how to chop people with a knife, you will swing your arms with a fist. Lu Hanjiang looked at the half-cut knife in his hand and let out a faint sigh. It seemed like it was time to find a suitable weapon. Half a day had passed since the bamboo forest interception, and Lu Hanjiang arrived at the post station and sent the news back to the capital. After nightfall, the remaining brothers of the royal guards also returned one after another. Including Bian Guang, there were actually 7 people who survived. It seems that the other party has ulterior motives. Otherwise, Lu Hanjiang wouldn't believe that those who can produce a batch of crossbows and arrows would not even be able to tidy up a few hundred households. The 7 of them were all injured, big and small. Lu Hanjiang asked them to each go and treat the wounds before coming back to discuss the matter. Not long after, the 7 people in the room sat down, with Lu Hanjiang up. He looked at Bian Guang among the 7 and asked, "Have you ever found any news?" "No," Bian Guang said with a look of shame, "these thieves, their martial arts skills are not noticeable, so they must have deliberately hidden them." After finishing speaking for a moment, another person in the room said, "Is it the Huashan sect? I just heard from the station brothers that Qin Zongqi was also blocked by bandits along the way." Huashan. It's not that Lu Hanjiang looks down on them. When it comes to the famous sects in the martial arts world, the Huashan sect is naturally considered one of them. However, when it comes to wrestling with the imperial guards, it's really a bit beyond our measure. Lu Hanjiang pondered for himself and asked, "What's going on with General Qin's side?" The person replied, "It's not a big deal. Most of the attacking thieves were killed by their brothers on the spot, and the rest also showed their faces. The brothers in Yunzhou are chasing after them, and they are indeed disciples of Mount Hua. Huashan sect. Is it really them?" Lu Hanjiang raised his eyebrows slightly puzzled. After a moment of contemplation, Lu Hanjiang waved his hand and said, "Brothers, you've worked hard today. Let's go back and rest first. The Qi family is in a big business, and I have sent a letter to Wang Yan, 100 households, to summon the Yunzhou Genie Guard to reinforce the Qin general flag." Everyone arched their hands and said, "Sir, how should we proceed?" Without hesitation, Lu Hanjiang said, "Stay in Yunzhou for now and investigate the escaped thieves. Wait for the orders from above." Everyone nodded and retreated one after another. Dian Guang finally glanced at Lu Hanjiang and saw that the other person was expressionless, so he calmly retreated out. It is uncertain whether the attack on himself or Qin Yu is a wave of people, so Lu Hanjiang still chooses to remain unchanged in response to changes. In the following time, while waiting for news from the capital, Lu Hanjiang instructed his subordinates to join forces with the local guard office to fully investigate the escaped Huashan disciples. For several days in a row, not a few disciples of Huashan were caught. On the contrary, those petty thieves, ruffians, and hooligans all suffered great difficulties. Lu Hanjiang ordered them to be punished severely, appearing as if they were angry and embarrassed. On this day, as usual, Lu Hanjiang sat in the yamen drinking tea, but he heard a sound of horse hooves. Dust was flying outside the door, and as soon as the leader got off his horse, he strode towards the inside with a shooting star. His beard was as strong as a halberd, and Kong's powerful face frightened the small officials beside the door. He wore a silver robe with a rustling sound, as loud as a bell, which made people's ears tingle. "Ha ha ha, Lao Lu, you also have such embarrassing moments." I saw the big man sitting across from Lu Hanjiang without invitation, grabbing a teapot and drinking it without hesitation. In no time, the half-pot of good tea had already entered his stomach. "A waste of heaven," Lu Hanjiang shook his head and said, "This is a good gift from the emperor. Pour it out like drinking water." Upon hearing this, the big man put down the teapot and savored it, smashing his mouth and disdainfully saying, "I haven't tasted anything new." Regarding this, Lu Hanjiang did not make any evaluation. He looked up and saw that more than 10 people who were accompanying him were standing under the corridor. He turned his head and asked the man, "Old Jiang, what did the above say?" This man, who resembles a bandit, is named Jiang Shao. He is one of the 14,000 households of the royal guards and, like Lu Hanjiang, has been stationed in the capital for years. As for calling him Lao Lu, it's not that the relationship between the two is so good that they forget their old friendship, it's just that he was deceived by the commanding officer Meng Yuan. I don't know if it was a sudden idea from the commander, but Lord Meng privately increased the age on his resume by 20 years. At that time, Lu Hanjiang, a wealthy member of the Genie Guard who was less than 20 years old, was extremely popular. It was rare for someone to investigate his background, as it was recorded that he was a middle-aged man over 40 years old. Lu Hanjiang also followed the idea of Commander Meng and pretended to be steady in front of him, and usually kept his age secret. Under this pretentious posture, more people believed it, and some even delved deeper, discovering the Lu family from which Lu Hanjiang came from. But if we continue to investigate the Lu family, not to mention anything else, in terms of age, the Lu family all say that Lu Hanjiang is a young man in his early 20s, which actually makes those people believe that Lu Hanjiang deliberately hid. Speaking of the Lu family, when Lu Shangshu sent Lu Hanjiang to the Genie Guard, although Lu Yan had a personal relationship with the commanding officer Meng Yuan, he naturally couldn't be too conspicuous on the surface. Otherwise, Lu Shangshu would not have been able to serve as an official. Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net. So, in order to cover up, Lu Shangshu created a background for Lu Hanjiang, who disliked reading and loved practicing martial arts. He then arranged for Lu Hanjiang to participate in the selection of the royal guards, and finally used this as a reason to expel him from his clan. There are only a few people who can trace this level of the Lu family, and the reasons arranged by Lu Shangshu are reasonable and reasonable. Even Lu Hanjiang's parents are unaware of the situation. At that time, he was expelled from the family and felt a little sad. Going a bit further, in short, Jiang Shao and other 1,000 households treat Lu Hanjiang as their peers. Lao Lu, if I had to tell you, you're really lucky. Jiang Shao scared twice and looked at Lu Hanjiang with envy on his face, saying, although this job is not a big deal, it has actually hurt many brothers and damaged the face of our royal guards. But don't worry, let's say hello, this matter is not your responsibility. In theory, Qin Yu is a person under the jurisdiction of Lu Hanjiang and was also arranged by him to escort prisoners. Although there has been no major incident now, he has injured so many royal guards that he cannot avoid being punished. However, after all, Lu Hanjiang has a special identity and is covered by a commander, and Qin Yu's arrangements are also instructions from above, so he cannot be blamed. But for Jiang Shao, no matter what, in the event of such a situation, Lu Hanjiang couldn't even afford to say that he was not good at handling things, which is called formidable. Let's get to the point. The higher-ups have arranged for you to come over, what's the plan? Lu Hanjiang naturally knew that if it was just to reassure him, there would be no need to dispatch people at the level of 1,000 households. Speaking of this, Jiang Zhao's face turned cold and he said, I've caught all those fish that missed the net. 7, 7, 8, 8. Lu Hanjiang seemed to understand what he was here to do. Okay, bring them along and let's take a walk around Mount Hua. Chapter 5. Halfway up. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lao Lu, how did Qin Yu recruit you? On the way, Jiang Zhao's sudden question made Lu Hanjiang's eyes look straight at him. There are a lot of old fogies in the royal guards, but there are no fools. Old Jiangsheng has big eyes and thick eyebrows. How can he even be so honest? But I also understand. That kid is a bit sharp and not likable, Jiang Shao said with a look of understanding you, nodding repeatedly towards the landing in Hanjiang. Lu Hanjiang looked at him speechlessly and asked, Old Jiang, have you started a family? Ah. It's done. My wife and children are hot on the con. What, are you planning to get married? Old Jiang Rao said with interest. That's not true, Lu Hanjiang patted his shoulder and said earnestly, if you have nothing to do, go home more and hug your child. The depth of the royal guards is too deep for you to grasp. Hey, you're such an old man. Talking about some things along the way was not boring, and as we joked, we saw a team wearing shackles on the official road. When Lu Hanjiang and his team went to Huashan, they also had to bring the Huashan disciples they had taken down earlier. He had previously told Jiang Shao that he had captured 7, 7, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, and 8, which was a bit too disrespectful of the Huashan sect disciples. Indeed, almost all of the disciples they sent out were ordinary disciples, but they couldn't resist this group of people. They were not very skilled and had a good temper. They were a dog official every time, but if they couldn't beat them, they would wipe their necks, and they would rather die than surrender. You said that as an outsider disciple, you can't get a lot of money in a month. What kind of luck are you playing with? Lu Hanjiang was also very helpless. Fortunately, Qin Yu still forced a few survivors on his side, otherwise it would be a bit difficult. After all, if a person dies, he can say whatever he wants. If a person is still alive, some things are not easy to do. I have met 2 adults. The first ones I met were Qin Yu's 2 attendants, Gao Ming and Tang Jin, both of whom were also injured. Lu Hanjiang just let out a sigh and said, thieves have some skills, even you are injured. That's what he said, but Lu Hanjiang's heart was filled with a murmur. The people arranged by the higher-ups were not good, they actually only found disciples from Huashan. Thank you, sir. Tang Jin probably didn't like Lu Hanjiang, but out of respect and inferiority, he replied dryly. It's better to have a more sophisticated understanding of the world. While caring about the situation along Lu Hanjiang's journey, and talking about their affairs, naturally, it's all about reporting good news rather than bad news. After chatting about it, Lu Hanjiang asked, "Where is the general flag of Qin?" Lord Qin is interrogating the Huashan disciple. Gao Ming paused and added, "The leading Huashan disciple is from the Qi family." This is an unexpected joy. Lu Hanjiang raised his eyebrows. An accident is really unexpected, but happiness is not necessarily the case. Except for the arch-nemesis of the Qi family in the court, no one wants to capture this Qi family in Huashan. Keeping him can better put pressure on the Huashan faction, but catching him can make it easier for Huashan to find excuses. Lu Hanjiang followed Gao Ming to find Qin Yu, who was glaring at another young man. "Sir." Seeing Lu Hanjiang, Qin Yu stood up and saluted. Nodding towards him, Lu Hanjiang looked at the young man with shackles on his hands and feet. Although his clothes were heavily damaged, it did not affect his overall appearance. Despite being banned for his martial arts, his hair was not disheveled, his demeanor was not decadent, and he still showed a certain aura. "Are you from the Qi family?" Lu Hanjiang asked from a high position. Staring intently at the silver robe of the 1,000 household flying fish robe, the young man said with a heart full of words, "Qi family, Qi Li." Qi Li's rebellious gaze was very impolite as he stared at Lu Hanjiang, as if he wanted to engrave his appearance in his mind. Lu Hanjiang didn't care. Qi Li had indeed not been beaten by society and didn't even know how to pretend. With such a temperament, he would inevitably die in the future. He was too lazy to argue with the dead. "Bring him along," Lu Hanjiang gestured to Bian Guang behind to bring Qi Li along. Qi Li was still staring at landing in Hanjiang and blurted out, "Dog." The official words were probably still in his throat, but Bian Guang hit him in the face with a single blow, interrupting his later words. Bian Guang rudely stepped Qi Li's head into the mud and said, "Sir, the Qi family definitely wants to use this kid to collude with the martial arts sects and plot rebellion. It's better to hand him over to a lowly position for interrogation and have him confess his mastermind behind the scenes. The implied meaning is to be sent to the Imperial Edict prison. The work of the royal guards in the court is to offend people, and the accusations of Luo Ji are simply open-mouthed. It is common to resort to forced punishment." Upon hearing Bian Guang's words, Qi Li struggled hard and stared at him in astonishment. Lu Hanjiang waved his hand and said, "The Qi family's death penalty is hard to escape. There's no need to go too far. Just take him up Mount Hua." "Yes." Bian Guang lifted his foot and called on the two brothers to take Qi Li down. At this moment, Qin Yu, who had been silent all along, suddenly spoke up and said, "Sir, can I accompany you to the Huashan sect?" "You?" Lu Hanjiang couldn't imagine how Qin Yu was interested in Mount Hua. Qin Yu said calmly, "The Huashan sect has injured many brothers this time. I humbly want to help them regain justice together." Of course, this is a pretext. Qin Yu had only one reason to go to Huashan, which was a sentence he said to Qi Li when he attacked the team earlier. "I am a beautiful woman, but how can I follow the thief?" This statement is simply inexplicable. From a standpoint, you, Qi Li, are blocking the way and robbing criminals. This is the thief. Perhaps it was because of Qi Li's nonsense, or perhaps because Qi Li's gaze at him was too complicated, Qin Yu made a request to accompany Lu Hanjiang. From a personal perspective, Lu Hanjiang didn't mind Qin Yu's request. It's better to say that he was quite happy to have an extra person. It's not that he has any fear of the Huashan sect, but rather a habit. When he first became the royal guards, Lu Hanjiang always gave his all in every move, because at that time he knew nothing about the martial arts world. But as his official position rose and his opponents became stronger, he suddenly realized that his strength was unique. From defeating his opponent in a fierce battle, to knocking them down with 3 fists and 2 kicks, and then becoming invincible with just 1 punch, Lu Hanjiang never fought anyone with all his might. Not doing my best once, not doing my best twice, and the 3rd time, I have become accustomed to keeping one hand. As he spent more and more time in the position of Qianhu of the Royal Guards, he became more and more accustomed to controlling his strength within the range of opponents at this level. Until now, Lu Hanjiang has rarely taken action again. He cultivates confidence, accumulates connections, and is more accustomed to playing a game with limited cards than knocking down opponents with a single punch. Yes, although a bit arrogant, in fact, for Lu Hanjiang now, whether it's the intrigues of the court or the swords and enmities in the martial arts world, they are just games. However, from a standpoint, this may not be easy to explain, as it is one's immediate superior who has to deal with Qin Yu. So Wang Yan appeared. Adults don't need to worry, but some women and children can take a trip to the capital due to their lowly duties. Lu Hanjiang narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Wang Yan. In order to give Qin Yu a station, this guy didn't even want to hide, did he? Since all the excuses were sent to the door like this, Lu Hanjiang decided to act kindly and bring Qin Yu along. As the poem goes, looking up at the red sun approaching, looking back at the low white clouds, it is said that the grandeur of Mount Hua is extraordinary. The Huashan sect is located here, with steep cliffs and cliffs rising from the peak. Near the top of the mountain, there is a pavilion with a stone table and 2 stone chairs inside. Master, there is news coming from the capital that the royal guards are planning to climb Mount Hua. The young disciple bowed outside the pavilion. The middle-aged man in the pavilion is the contemporary leader of Huashan, Shang Jidao. He has a plump physique and stands with a brocade robe and jade belt on his back. If it weren't for the long sword around his waist, it wouldn't be surprising to see him as a wealthy and idle person. Got it, you go down and tell the disciples at the foot of the mountain not to neglect the guests. Shang Jidao's expression was broad-minded, and there was no hint of sadness on his face. Disciple takes orders. After the young disciple stepped down, Shang Jidao looked at the white clouds, seemingly calm and turbulent. It's always right to come. Chapter 6. Being a Role Model. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The martial arts world is divided into righteous and demonic realms, and the demonic realm produces giants. The righteous realm has its leader. Shaolin and Wudang are all top-notch sects on the righteous path. If we talk about their top titles, there has been endless debate for 100 years without any results. Winning 1 point in high school is like blushing in the face and ears, while being 1 zhang tall makes people unable to rise to the idea of competing. Nowadays, people in the martial arts world do not have any ideas about their first and second positions, but instead work hard to compete for the 3rd position. Among many sects, the 5 sacred mountains are a special example. In terms of strength, the 5 sacred mountains and 5 schools are separated, and each school is a top-notch force in the martial arts world, but it cannot be considered top-notch. However, if the 5 sacred mountains merge, then both Shaolin and Wudang need to carefully consider it. However, each faction of the 5 sacred mountains has its own inheritance, and their martial arts skills vary, making it difficult to merge them. Even if they had to unite due to the current situation, it was a flash in the pan. Since the last leader of the 5 Sacred Mountains Alliance passed away 20 years ago, the 5 Sacred Mountains have been in internal strife almost every year. In recent years, the Huashan sect has declined, perhaps due to no longer expecting the position of the leader of the 5 Sacred Mountains Alliance. Instead, they have closed their doors and ignored worldly affairs, resulting in a significant reduction in their reputation and influence. In this situation, there are many people who feel that the Huashan sect is easy to bully. In fact, even Lu Hanjiang does not have a high opinion of Huashan. The premise for pretending to be a pig and eating a tiger is to be a real tiger, while the shrinking head turtle only needs a piece of fig leaf. It took 2 months for Lu Hanjiang and his team to reach Huashan. This time, their purpose of going to Huashan was to intimidate various sects in the martial arts world, and they naturally had to maintain their momentum, which is why they spent more time on the journey. "Sir, the Huashan mountain gate is ahead," Bian Guang reminded from the side, his eyebrows occasionally furrowing as he spoke, and his eyes drifting to both sides. With Lu Hanjiang's strength, he naturally noticed that there were many people hidden around him, including top-notch experts and inexperienced thieves. This is also the result of their efforts to show off all along the way, and many people in the martial arts world were attracted by their action of climbing Mount Hua this time. Since they entered the territory of Huashan, the number of people quietly following around is constantly increasing. Lu Hanjiang didn't care either. He looked at Jiang Shao beside him and asked, "Old Jiang, what do you say?" "Haha." Jiang Shao sneered and casually picked up Qi Li, who was brought with him. The dust along the way wiped away the edges of this proud young man. His dark face could no longer see his original wildness, and he didn't react much to being carried like a little chicken. Jiang Shao dismounted from his horse, holding an embroidered spring sword in one hand and gripping Qi Li in the other. With a single step on his feet, he flew up the mountain. The disciples at the mountain gate tried to stop him, but couldn't even get close, falling to the ground like the wind blowing wheat. It seems that Jiang Shao is going to give Huashan a blow. This arrogant move was seen as commonplace in the eyes of the people of the royal guards, and had long been commonplace. Lu Hanjiang rode forward, and everyone followed. Before reaching the mountain gate, without looking at the fallen disciple, Bian Guang asked, "Sir, are you going to dismount?" Naturally, Lu Hanjiang said as he dismounted first and smiled, "Mr. Shang's face still needs to be taken care of." After speaking, Lu Hanjiang led a group of genie guards and swaggered into the mountain gate in front of the angry and hesitant eyes of the disciples of Huashan. He slowly walked up the stairs step by step. But it wasn't even halfway up the mountain. Before Lu Hanjiang could fully appreciate the scenery of Mount Hua, an uninvited voice interrupted his interest. Lord Lu came from a long distance, but it was impolite not to meet him at the mountain gate. As the words fell, everyone looked up and saw that the person speaking was Shang Jidao. Unexpectedly, the leader of Huashan did not deal well with Jiang Shao, who rushed forward inside the door, but deliberately hid in the middle of the mountain waiting for Lu Hanjiang to come later. Bian Guang and others were almost speaking at the same time as Shang Jidao, each pulling out their swords and blocking Lu Hanjiang's body. This is not that Bian Guang is arrogant and thinks he can surpass the leader of Huashan, but rather his responsibility as a subordinate. Mr. Shang laughed and said, "With just 1,000 households, how dare Mr. Lao personally welcome you?" Lu Hanjiang waved his hand and asked everyone to make way. Looking at Shang Jidao standing in the center of the mountain road, he smiled and asked, "What advice does Mr. Shang have?" "Lord Lu has just come to Huashan for the first time, and I have only briefly shown my friendship as a landlord. Please come with me so that I can introduce you to the magnificent scenery of Huashan." After speaking, Shang Jidao stood aside and gave way. Without hesitation, Lu Hanjiang immediately said, "You go up first. Mr. Jiang should be lacking someone to give him a strong voice now." "Yes." Bian Guang hesitated for a moment, but still took orders and led the other royal guards, crossing the Shang Road and continuing up the mountain road. Lu Hanjiang took a few steps, stepped on the same level as Shang Jidao, and arched his hand, saying, "Mr. Shang, you're welcome." "Lord Lu, please." Shang Jidao really let go and let Lu Hanjiang take the lead. The two of them walked slowly on the mountain road like walking. As Shang Jidao walked, he casually pointed to the foot of the mountain and said, "Your Highness, however, came in a hurry. Later, these peaches will bloom, and at that time, Mount Hua will be like a fairyland on earth. It's not a coincidence." Lu Hanjiang looked in the direction pointed by Shang Jidao, as if there was a hint of peach color. "If adults are interested, it's okay to stay and wait, but it's over a month," Shang Jidao stopped and said with a slight smile. "I don't understand." Lu Hanjiang stopped and looked at Shang Jidao, asking, Mr. Shang really wants to use Mount Hua to confront the court. Lord Lu laughed, I just want to make friends with you. Shang Jidao made a gesture of invitation, but this time he took a step forward and said, I heard that Lord Lu has many friends, both in the martial arts world and not in the martial arts world. Having multiple friends always leads to multiple paths, Lu Hanjiang did not deny. Your words make sense, Shang Jidao chuckled and praised. Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net suddenly changed his tone and asked, do you have the honor of being friends with adults? Mr. Shang, you are the head of the magnificent Huashan sect. Lu Hanjiang looked at Shang Ji with a strange expression. Although Huashan may not be as strong as the royal guards, the leader of Huashan, in terms of status and strength, dares not to compete with the same knowledge as the royal guards, but at least it is not illusory to confront the officials of the royal guards. Lu Hanjiang is only 1,000 households, how could this Huashan leader suddenly pull down his body to be his friend? Shang Jidao smiled heartily and said, Lord Lu is too modest. With your strength, being promoted to the position of governor is the matter at hand. My strength. Lu Hanjiang's eyes narrowed slightly. He hasn't been so famous in recent years, where did he know his strength? However, it cannot be said so absolutely, after all, just a while ago, Lu Hanjiang just broke a knife. After a moment of silence, Lu Hanjiang said coldly, Mr. Shang knows that Jiang Qianhu, Mr. Zhang's trip here is to have that ignorant young man die in Huashan. I know. Shang Jidao's smile remained unchanged as he said, Qi Li, this child, has been exceptionally talented since childhood and is well behaved and sensible. He is a talented young man. Unfortunately, he attacked the imperial court without authorization and violated national laws. Are you planning to give up and use Qi Li as a meeting gift after hearing this? Lu Hanjiang pondered for a moment and said, I heard that Qi Li is a disciple of your sect. He treated you as a half-teacher, and Mr. Shang doesn't want to save one or two. Merit must be rewarded, and mistakes must be punished. Lord Jiang wants to kill him for his own good. Only in this way can he avoid making mistakes next time. It is not yet clear whether Shang Jidao is a good leader, but I believe he must be a good master. Chapter 7. Friends 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The most important thing about making friends is sincerity, so after Shang Jidao presented half of his disciple as a gift, Lu Hanjiang immediately changed his attitude. Since Mr. Shang has said so, how about we each take a step back? Qi Li will return it to your sect. If you publicly admit your mistake, this matter will be considered a thing of the past. After listening to Lu Hanjiang's words, Shang Jidao smiled bitterly and said, it is said that people in the martial arts world should breathe a sigh of relief. Why should Lord Lu be so aggressive? Wandering in the martial arts world, face is much more important than life. If Lu Hanjiang really does this, it will undoubtedly bring down the face of the Huashan sect. Does Mr. Shang really care about his face and reputation? Lu Hanjiang couldn't tell what kind of person the Huashan sect leader was, but at least he wasn't foolish. I don't care, but Huashan cares. On this matter, Shang Jidao had a clear attitude. It's not surprising that Lu Hanjiang was rejected. He didn't expect the other party to agree to such harsh conditions, so he changed his tone and said, Mr. Shang, do you know that on the way back to Beijing, I also encountered a group of thieves? I know, Shang Jidao said candidly, but that's not from Huashan. Are those guests invited by Mr. Shang? Yes, not really, Shang Jidao said ambiguously. I don't know them at all, and I don't have any interactions with them on weekdays. It's just that this time we happened to meet, and we invited them to join us. Why? At this point, Lu Hanjiang was too lazy to beat around the bush and asked directly, Mr. Shang should know that if it weren't for the attack on my official, who is 1,000 households, perhaps there wouldn't have been a trip to Mount Hua this time. In fact, the royal guards oversee the entire martial arts world, from famous sects to the 9 streams of mountain bandits. With so many affairs in the world, if we were to scrutinize every one, it would probably not be enough to double the number of members of the royal guards. So the royal guards turn a blind eye to some harmless things. If it doesn't involve Lu Hanjiang this time, no matter how Qin Yu and the disciples of Huashan fight, the higher-ups won't care, and the result will be. If Qin Yu is not dead, how should we bargain afterwards? There will be someone to stand up for him. If Qin Yu is dead, he will be sent to Mount Hua, where one life is worth one. At the end of the day, if we go to fight against the Huashan sect for the sake of a general flag, even if we destroy Huashan, we won't get any benefits. The cost we pay may be even greater. After all, there are many famous sects that are eyeing them, and the royal guards cannot do such a loss-making business. But when it comes to Lu Hanjiang, it's different. Even if we don't talk about his relationship with the commander Meng Yuan, let's just talk about the identity of the Qianhu of the royal guards. This is the facade of the royal guards. No one knows how many people there are in the 100 houses of the general flag, but there are only 14 in total in the 1,000 houses of the royal guards. They are not only the signboard of the royal guards, but also the backbone of the royal guards. It is the same to attack the 1,000 houses of the royal guards and throw battle letters on the table of the royal guards commander. Unconsciously, Shang Jidao used these 4 words as an explanation and didn't say much, but instead talked about another topic. Is the general flag that Qi Li took action against a subordinate of Lord Lu. Not bad. Lord Lu knows that many people want to kill him. Shang Jidao seemed to be talking about something unrelated to him. Mr. Shang is one of them, isn't he? Said Lu Hanjiang calmly. It's not me who wants to kill that general flag, it's just Qi Li, Shang Jidao explained, then looked at Lu Hanjiang and slowly said, but those 2 people want to kill you, Lord Lu. Kill me. Lu Hanjiang didn't expect that the swordsman in black came towards him. Perhaps it's also related to that general flag, said Shang Jidao. Qin Yu, Lu Hanjiang said, reciting the name, what kind of person is he that deserves your big shot like this? After a moment of silence, Shang Jidao shook his head and said, I'm not sure either. Maybe there's a secret in him, or maybe there's someone behind him. The Huashan sect is just acting under orders. On orders. Lu Hanjiang captured this special term. The trustworthiness of the martial arts world, not the pattern of the Shang dynasty. Huashan is also a first-class sect, and it is unlikely to do foolish things like seeking skin from a tiger. Therefore, perhaps the answer is not in the martial arts world. After thinking through the checkpoint for a moment, Lu Hanjiang couldn't help but praise, the leader of Huashan is truly extraordinary. Everyone knows that you have a friendship between Huashan and the Qi family, but they don't know that Mr. Shang still has friends in the court. Indeed, our ancestors had an old relationship with the Qi family. This is not fraud, but I have other aspirations in my heart. Shang Jidao casually explained, without elaborating, and then continued the previous topic. The person who attacked Lord Lu was from the Shentian sect. People from the demon cult. The more we investigate, the more it becomes puzzling. Lu Hanjiang and the demon cult rarely engage in conflicts, and the possibility of dealing with him out of personal hatred is extremely low. It is likely only because of Qin Yu. Unexpectedly, both the righteous and demonic factions are trying to deal with him. Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net even targets the royal guards. What exactly is this guy's identity? If Lord Lu cares, I do know where those 2 people are staying. Shang Jidao's words made it even more difficult for people to understand his thoughts. Seeing Lu Hanjiang looking at him without speaking, Shang Jidao smiled and said, don't doubt it, adults. Although Huashan and Shentian sect are fighting together this time, they are each going their own way. Mr. Shang is so honest, and I have received this favor. What should I do? Please state it clearly. Lu Hanjiang was not affected and received the benefit of handling affairs for others, which is only natural. So I dared to call out, Brother Lu. Shang Jidao sighed and suddenly talked about the past. I have been wandering alone since I was young, without any parents or family. Later, when I was taken in by the master's sect, I made Huashan my own home and even married my fellow disciples, having a pair of children. Lu Hanjiang led the spiritual assembly and said, with the skills of Brother Shang, how difficult is it to protect his wife, daughter, and family. It's impossible to protect it. Shang Jidao sneered and shook his head. As they spoke, they could already see the shadow of the front hall of the Huashan sect, and the sound of the struggle was simply unbearable. Jiang Zhao's loud voice exhausted all the harsh and dirty vocabulary, specifying that he wanted to embarrass Huashan. However, on the side of Huashan, he was grabbed and his backbone was not there, making his momentum really weak. Everything is up to Brother Lu. Suddenly, Lu Hanjiang felt Shang Jidao beside him transform into a different person. He put away the humble compromise on his face and replaced it with indomitable perseverance. The stone steps under his feet were also gradually cracked by the powerful internal force. Shang Jidao exerted his strength at his feet and flew into the hall, drinking with full energy. 1,000 households of the Genie Guard, are you deceiving me? No one in Huashan. Upon hearing this, Lu Hanjiang's mouth twitched slightly. He was no big or small, just 1,000 households. Chapter 8. Chaos in the Hall. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Before, Lu Hanjiang couldn't figure it out. Shang Jidao pulled down his body to make friends with him and deliberately sold himself a favor. What was the reason for this? It wasn't until he saw two figures suddenly flying out of the main hall, one of whom was the swordsman who had intercepted him earlier. The imperial sword on the left is in hand, making a decisive move, while the condensed chi palm on the right leaves no room for survival. As the last outsider to arrive, Lu Hanjiang can be certain that Shang Jidao, who rushed in to confront Jiang Shao just now, knew that these two people were ambushed on the side. What person? Thieves, dare you! The appearance of the two black-clothed men was beyond everyone's expectations, and probably no one knew their background except for Shang Jidao and Lu Hanjiang. The Genie Wei side was greatly alarmed, while the Huashan side was at a loss. These two people came very quickly, not to mention that Jiang Shao was not on guard at all. Even if there was one, there was still a merchant on the front. Between the lightning and fire, there was no time for anyone to think. Seeing that both black-clad men had already attacked behind Jiang Shao, Lu Hanjiang no longer hesitated and flew up. The embroidered spring blade was unsheathed, and a powerful blow hit the black-robed swordsman fiercely. The swordsman in black is not confused. He who once fought with Lu Hanjiang will not be careless this time. He withdraws his sword and turns around. He nearly gathers the essence of his life's swordsmanship in one move. He is skillful and unskillful, and sweeps away with a straight sword. Swords and swords meet, and history repeats itself once again. The embroidered spring blade was cut off at the waist, but unlike the previous time, this already cracked sword also broke off on the spot along with the embroidered spring blade. The internal force emanating from the sword's body caused the swordsman under the black robe to let out a muffled groan. His hand, holding a half-cut short sword, trembled slightly and could not move for a moment. Lu Hanjiang, who should have taken action, never softened his hand. He abandoned his broken blade and turned his palm into a fist, hitting the swordsman with one punch. On the other side, the black-robed man also slapped Jiang Shao on the back. At the same time, both Jiang Shao and the black-clad swordsman were seriously injured and vomited blood. However, the swordsman still flew backwards after being punched by Lu Hanjiang, while Jiang Shao was still holding on tightly. His hands, which were in opposition to Shang, were not retracted, and even in a desperate situation, his internal strength burst and even overwhelmed the opponent's head. All of this happened between a few breaths, and the people with low martial arts skills had no time to react. On this side, Jiang Shao and the black-robed swordsman had already been seriously injured, while Lu Hanjiang and another black-robed man who took action coincidentally stimulated their internal strength again, condensing their energy in their palms. However, the black-robed man swung his palm towards Lu Hanjiang, but the latter avoided and instead turned to target the black-robed swordsman who had flown out. At this distance, with the internal power of Lu Hanjiang, even if he didn't hit, the domineering palm wind was enough to make the swordsman die on the spot. Suddenly, Lu Hanjiang felt a chill surge up his spine, his movements paused, and the sound of the flowing arrow whistling in his ear almost exploded like lightning. Is there anyone else? Someone was planning to ambush someone, but Lu Hanjiang had no choice but to turn around and deal with the threat in front of him. But between life and death, except for Lu Hanjiang, who was skilled and brave, everyone else was stunned when they saw the arrows flying towards him. Even Shang Jidao, who knew his strength, was a bit panicked. Today's farce was anticipated by Shang Jidao. If he dies 1,000 households, it will be a gamble, and if he dies too, it will be a Jedi. He is not sure how to deal with the anger of the royal guards. So Shang Jidao's two palms suddenly exerted force, and Jiang Zhao's return of light was instantly suppressed by absolute strength. Jiang Zhao's body was suddenly thrown out a few meters away, and two deep grooves were drawn under his feet. His endpoint was in the direction of Lu Hanjiang. Pushi. That was the sound of sharp weapons entering the flesh. Jiang Zhao's gaze shifted downwards, and he saw half of an arrow sprouting from his throat, accompanied by the gushing blood. Jiang Zhao wore a look of unwillingness, and his towering body collapsed like a pagoda. Let's go. The black-robed man immediately turned the target when he missed a move. He took advantage of the time when the arrow flew and bypassed Lu Hanjiang, grabbing the black-robed swordsman on the ground. When everyone was shocked by Jiang Zhao's sudden death, he escaped from the main hall. Chase. Bian Guang didn't talk nonsense and immediately summoned his brothers to chase after him, but he was stopped by Lu Hanjiang. No need, Lu Hanjiang lowered his head and stared into Jiang Zhao's eyes, which he couldn't bear to close. He said calmly, "Those two have excellent martial arts skills. Even if you catch up, what can you do?" As soon as the words fell, 5 or 6 genie guards knelt down at Lu Hanjiang, all of whom were brought by Jiang Zhao from the capital and should be of the kind of confidence. "Lord Lu, please make the decision," those few people said in unison. Although the person who died was not from Lu Hanjiang, it was his colleague. If it weren't for standing up and saying something, not to mention that it was difficult to explain to the commander, people all over the world would underestimate the royal guards. Lu Hanjiang nodded at the few people, bent down and closed Jiang Zhao's eyes with his hands. However, he stood up and looked at the people of Huashan with an indifferent expression. At this moment, the people of Huashan are also filled with mixed emotions. With just Jiang Zhao's bold words in the hall, they cannot sympathize with this person's death, and even secretly have joy in their hearts. However, whether the royal guards are or not, Jiang Zhao is not a lone ranger. Behind him stands the most terrifying force in the entire martial arts world. Yu reading www.yuyukangshu.net. Under the complex gaze of the crowd in Huashan, Lu Hanjiang spoke up, "The two thieves who attacked and killed Jiang Qianhu, who were secretly stabbing people and acting in a sneaky manner, must be from the demon sect. Undoubtedly, the prominent martial arts sects colluded with the demon sect to send people and horses to rob prisoners first, and then kill the imperial officials and Huashan sect. What else can be said? If it were to be said that Lu Hanjiang also spent more than 10 years in the Genie Guard, this kind of hat tying was just a matter of hand. Besides, what he said, as long as he replaced the 3 words Huashan sect with Shang Jidao, it would basically be a fact. Upon hearing Lu Hanjiang's words, Huashan immediately retorted, saying that every word you say is not lively, and it was Shang Jidao who came out to control the scene. Lord Lu, wait a moment. After pressing the button on the Huashan crowd, Shang Jidao approached one by one and bowed to Lu Hanjiang, saying, "Those two people have nothing to do with my Huashan. Lord, you can ask any Huashan disciple present, and no one will recognize them." Lu Hanjiang sneered and said, "Mr. Shang has such great face. With just a few words, you planned this matter. What do you think of me as the royal guards? Lord Lu, calm down, Shang Jidao said calmly, these two thieves are acting recklessly in Huashan. Our sect will definitely investigate to the end, capture these two thieves, and personally escort them to the capital to comfort the spirits of Jiang Qianhu in heaven. No matter how many tongues of Shang were blooming with lotus flowers, Lu Hanjiang refused to accept it. How can I believe you? You first hid the Qi family, and then let them intend to rob the court of the serious criminals. Now even the thousands of households of the imperial guards have died in your Huashan. Helplessly, Shang Jidao sighed and said, so what does Lord Lu want? Lu Hanjiang was not polite and said directly, I heard that Mr. Shang has a pair of children. Why don't we invite these two people and I to stay in the capital for a few days? One day, we will find the thief in Huashan and... No way. Chapter 9. Huashan Incident. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The woman behind Shang Jidao stopped Lu Hanjiang loudly, dressed in a simple and elegant robe, tied up in a woman's hair bun, with a blue long sword at her waist, and a hint of heroic and haughty demeanor between her eyebrows. She stood among a group of men, but did not show any weakness. Junior sister, don't worry, let me handle this matter. Shang Jidao addressed her and confirmed her identity as the wife of the head of Mount Hua, Gu Qianhan. Senior brother, this person has no sincerity. He must be planning to use the power of the royal guards to bully Huashan. Why say that again? Although Gu Qianhan spoke rudely, perhaps considering the face of Shang Jidao, his tone softened a lot. Shang Jidao remained silent, shook his head at her, and then looked at Lu Hanjiang, saying, I only have these two children. The capital is far away, so why should Lord Lu be so aggressive? Lu Hanjiang turned to his side with his hand down and said, if it weren't for Mr. Shang's sake, I would have invited everyone to visit the capital together. Don't waste my good intentions. You. A cold light suddenly appeared, and the sword in Gu Qianhan's hand was unsheathed, with a faint cold light pointing directly at Lu Hanjiang. This lady in charge had a completely different temperament from Shang Jidao, with a straight temper. Lu Hanjiang remained unmoved, and the Jin Yiwei behind him also kept an unfriendly gaze on the people of Huashan. Of course, it's a bit fanciful just because they want to fight Huashan, but as long as Huashan's people have a bit of reason, they know they can't fight. In a tense atmosphere, Shang Jidao frowned slightly and said, Junior sister, you must not be impolite. Senior brother. Step back. Shang Jidao increased his tone a bit, and Gu Qianhan reluctantly withdrew his sword and sheathed it. Shang Jidao smiled apologetically at Lu Hanjiang and said, I made Lord Lu laugh. Mr. Shang, you're welcome. He reached out and didn't hit the smiling face. Lu Hanjiang accompanied them and didn't care, but his curiosity grew even more. Shang Jidao, in such a big play, didn't hesitate to sacrifice Huashan's face to see what he wanted to do. Or rather, what exactly does the person behind him want to do? Never mind, since that's already the case, why not accompany Shang Jidao to finish singing this grand play? Lu Hanjiang's heart moved and he smiled, anyway, since Mr. Shang doesn't want it, we can't force others to do anything difficult. Qin Zongqi, bring the prisoner up. Yes. Although it was the root cause of this farce, Qin Yu was almost always a spectator throughout, and the reason was simple. His martial arts were good, but he was not good enough to engage in battles at the level of Shang Jidao. The recent clash of lightning and flint is too distant for him now. As instructed by Lu Hanjiang, Qin Yu and several others escorted the captured Huashan disciples in from outside the palace. At this moment, the faces of the Huashan group became even more ugly. These are all the criminals who have rebelled and harassed our royal guards. Lu Hanjiang pointed to those disciples and said to Shang Jidao, I heard that they are also disciples of Mount Hua. So please ask Mr. Shang to chop off their heads in the name of Mount Zhenghua. As soon as these words were spoken, the entire hall fell silent. No matter what, it was Hua Shan's fault for this matter. It was just that the leader of Huashan personally took action to kill Huashan's disciples, which was no longer as simple as slapping Huashan's face. Shang Jidao furrowed his brows, his face slightly condensed, and his eyes filled with a sense of indecisiveness. His acting skills were really good. For a long time, accompanied by a long sigh, Shang Jidao closed his eyes and said, "Go and call Zhuor and Luor." "Master." "Senior brother." Everyone in Huashan hesitated to speak, but none of them could stand up and say anything. Even Gu Qianhan only showed sadness on her face and did not say anything to stop her. Although she was impatient, she was not ignorant. Qi Li, the once proud disciple of Mount Hua, couldn't say anything at this moment. He clenched his lips and looked up at Qin Yu, who was holding him. The next second, an indescribable strong hatred erupted in his eyes, almost drowning Qin Yu. Qin Yu just frowned and looked at him, but didn't speak. Lu Hanjiang watched everyone's expressions one by one, but in the end, he just smiled and bowed to Shang a few times, saying, "Mr. Shang indeed has a general understanding. Then we will be waiting in the capital for the news of Mount Hua. Lord Lu, could you please let me explain a few words to Guzi and ask everyone to rest in the back hall and drink some tea?" Shang Jidao's helpless expression was very accurate. If he hadn't known the inside story beforehand, even Lu Hanjiang wouldn't have seen through his acting skills. "Mr. Shang, the tea in Huashan is expensive. If we can't drink it, we won't disturb you. Let the young master come down the mountain in an hour." Lu Hanjiang gave Bian Guang a look and asked him to take away Jiang Zhao's body. He led the way out of the hall. Bian Guang and the confidant of Jiang Zhao took the body with them, and the remaining royal guards rushed out, leaving only the Huashan crowd in the hall. The silent air was almost overwhelming. Shang Jidao remained silent, while others shook their heads and sighed, frowned and remained silent. Gu Qian, with her clothes fluttering, took a few steps forward and helped up Qi Li and the others on the ground. Shi Shu. Although Qi Li was taught martial arts by Shang Jidao, he did not apprentice, so like others, he referred to Gu Qianhan as Shi Shu. At this moment, his heart was filled with shame and he dared not look up at Gu Qianhan's face. "Alright, just come back." It's hard to imagine that Gu Qianhan, who had just shown no courtesy to Lu Hanjiang and even drew his sword towards him, would look so gentle. On the other side, Lu Hanjiang and his group descended the mountain, with an eerie silence in the atmosphere. They entered the royal guards, where life and death had long been commonplace, but this time it was a grand death for 1,000 households. When was the last time Qin Hu died? Lu Hanjiang doesn't know, but it's the first time since he joined the royal guards. He searched his mind for memories of Jiang Zhao and looked at the few confidants. "I remember, one of you is from the same hometown as Jiang Qinhu." The few people exchanged a glance, and one of them took a step forward and said, "To answer your question, I am from the same hometown as Mr. Jiang." "Okay, you can take a few brothers to buy a high-quality coffin, and then send Mr. Jiang back to his hometown. When you see my sister.in.law, apologize for me." Lu Hanjiang then took off his wallet and threw it to the person. "If it's not enough, let's keep it on credit for now." "Thank you, sir." The few people bowed to Lu Hanjiang, then apologized and took Jiang Zhao's body with them to handle the aftermath. After the few people left, Bian Guang spoke up and said, "Sir, this matter must be related to Huashan." "Why not?" He used his palm as a knife and made a chopping motion, meaning to end up killing the 2 children of Shang Jidao on the road. Lu Hanjiang glanced at him and said, "Just now, I was just making things difficult for him casually. I didn't expect him to be able to endure it. This matter is very serious, and we can only make decisions. Let's go back and report to the 2 pacifiers first, and then make plans." "Yes, I understand." Chapter 10. Jiang Hu Experiences. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. In early summer in the capital, the sound of cicadas is not harsh, and there is still a slight coolness at night. When Lu Hanjiang and his delegation returned to the Yamen, the guards guarding the gate had already changed 2 times. Under the lights, the authority of the North Town governor was undoubtedly revealed. Lord Lu, the guards on both sides bowed their heads and saluted, holding their swords without leaving. Lu Hanjiang dismounted from his horse and received 2 black-robed banners from under the door. One person led his horse, while the other approached and whispered, "Lord Wu is already in the lobby. Please hurry up." Wu Qiming, one of the 2 pacifiers of the Jini Wei, was in charge of the Northern Jinfu Bureau and was the superior of Lu Hanjiang. The incident in Huashan caused quite a stir this time, and the deceased Jiang Shao was also a subordinate of Wu Qiming. In terms of emotions and reason, he had to step forward. Lu Hanjiang took 3 steps into and entered the lobby, only to find that in addition to the pacifier Wu Qiming, there were also 2 old acquaintances, Deputy Qianhu Lu Yishou and Deputy Qianhu Ing Wushang. The Jini Guard has 1,000 households, consisting of 14 people, with official positions of the 5th rank. The so-called Deputy 1,000 households do not have a limit on the number of people, and are considered as candidates for the 1,000 households based on the 5th rank. Throughout history, when there were vacancies in the 1,000 households, they were always selected from among the Deputy 1,000 households, and there were rarely cases of promotion or external transfers. Lu Hanjiang also worked as a Deputy 1,000 household for a period of time. Seeing them appearing here, Lu Hanjiang roughly understood the purpose of Wu Qiming's visit today. "I've seen you, sir." Lu Hanjiang saluted with his fists clasped in his arms. "Well, you're here." Wu Qiming sat in front of the desk and saw Lu Hanjiang arrive. He put down the wooden sign in his hand and got up to leave his seat. Lu Hanjiang glanced away and saw that the wooden plaque had Jiang Zhao's name written on it. Looking at the wall behind Wu Qiming, there were only 13 wooden plaques left. Wu Qiming was not tall by birth. At the age of 40, his temples were already graying, and there was no sign of the imposing martial arts practitioners on his square face. He spoke in a gentle manner, and compared to the Jini Wei, he seemed more like a civil servant. However, Lu Hanjiang knew that it was a storm when his boss started. It's literally a storm. Wu Qiming is good at lightness skills and concealed weapons. He doesn't know how many deadly things he has hidden all over his body. Once he attacks, he will be killed or injured. I have learned about Jiang Zhao's situation. You handled it very well at Huashan, Wu Qiming first praised calmly. In fact, Wu Qiming didn't pay much attention to Jiang Zhao's death. The backstage of the Royal Guards was the toughest in the entire martial arts world, but unfortunately, there were also many lawless lunatics in the world, so he had long been accustomed to life and death. Speaking of which, this is not the first time he has received news of the death of his subordinates, but this time it was just 1,000 households who died. As for those 2 little children, someone from the Southern Bureau will take them away from you tomorrow. This matter has been transferred to them, and you don't need to worry about it anymore. Wu Qiming casually finalized the arrangements for the 2 children in Shangjidao. I understand my humble position. The Northern and Southern Protectorates of the Jini Wei can be roughly classified as the Southern Protectorate in charge of internal affairs and the Northern Protectorate in charge of external affairs. However, sometimes the 2 protectorates also work together to handle cases. For example, in this case of the Huashan incident, it is the job of the Nanjing Fushi to investigate the details of various passers-by and gather intelligence. When it comes to going to the door to seek justice, the people arranged for are from the Beijing Fushi. Then, Wu Qiming handed a blank wooden plaque to Lu Hanjiang and said, "You've worked hard all the way. Take a few days off first, and then take responsibility for the assessment of taking over as 1,000 households." Standing behind Lu Hanjiang is the commander of the Royal Guards, Meng Yuan. This is not a secret within the Royal Guards, and Wu Qiming has taken great care of him. Apart from normal rest, there are no detailed regulations for repairs or holidays in the regulations of the Royal Guards. It all depends on how the upper peak arranges in this regard. Moreover, in general, the assessment of 1,000 households is handled by the town magistrate, firstly for the sake of martial arts considerations, and secondly for the purpose of fostering a sense of support and nurturing some trusted personnel. Now Wu Qiming has entrusted the assessment work to Lu Hanjiang. Although there are only 2 people available, Lu Hanjiang can earn a lot of favors. Mr. Xie cultivated it. Wu Qiming affectionately patted Lu Hanjiang's shoulder, encouraged him a few words, and then left the lobby. The remaining 2 deputy 1,000 households looked at Lu Hanjiang with not only great respect, but also deep envy. With the support of the commander of the royal guards, they were about to achieve great success. I have met Mr. Lu. Lu Hanjiang looked at these 2 people, both of whom were the royal guards stationed in the capital. They met him frequently and knew each other well. Their abilities, Lu Hanjiang never doubted, were able to achieve the position of deputy 1,000 households, and their basic abilities were at least not mediocre. So the assessment of the Qianhu of the royal guards mainly focuses on one point, which is that their fists are strong enough. In previous years, the assessment was nothing more than picking out some tricky cases and letting these deputy households handle them. Whoever does well will be promoted. Lu Hanjiang was the same way back then, but the difference was that when he assessed, he was the only candidate. After looking at these 2 people, Lu Hanjiang said, "You go back first and come back in 2 days." Yes. The 2 of them bowed and retreated, and Lu Hanjiang turned to look at the wooden plaque of Jiang Shao on the desk. Lonely, he walked over and picked it up, hanging it in a vacant spot on the wall. Immediately, he shook his head again, took down the wooden sign, and placed it back on the desk paper. Lu Hanjiang has a mansion in the capital, with 3 entrances and 3 exits, which is not small. No matter how big it is, with his 5th-rank official status, he is not qualified to live. He has not yet married, and there is only him, a butler, and a few servants in the courtyard. Among many colleagues, it is considered the simplest. Due to a private agreement with Shang Jidao, Lu Hanjiang naturally couldn't throw the 2 children to the royal guards yamen, so he brought them back home and temporarily arranged for them to stay overnight. The next day, the person who picked them up arrived. Unexpectedly, the person in charge of handing them over would be Qiao Shifang. Lu Hanjiang took a deep breath and felt his teeth ache severely. Qiao Shifang, a native of the capital, held a position of 1,000 households in the Genie Guard and was under the jurisdiction of the Nanjing governor. He was the kind of person who stayed in the capital for nothing, but even more so for something. This is not the key. Qiao Shifang is a person of the 4th prince. This may be a bit inaccurate. After all, the 4th prince and the former Lu Hanjiang are the same kind of person, an anomaly within the system, and belong to the fanatical spirit of the martial arts world. Even if you are a person with a broken chest, he can call you brothers and sisters. But the fact that Qiao Shifang is a good friend of the 4th prince cannot be fake, and it is common for 2 promiscuous sons to go to the brothel together. The 4th prince does not like literature and loves martial arts. He has no influence and does not form cliques. He is full of desire to venture into the martial arts world, but unfortunately, he has been unable to leave the capital for many years. His relationship with Qiao Shifang is also openly revealed, so it is not considered taboo. Lu Hanjiang looked at Qiao Shifang with a smile on his face and couldn't help but let out a deep sigh. After all, his pretended maturity was not as good as his true old age. He had always been curious about what kind of backhand Shang Jidao had, daring to entrust his 2 children to the royal guards. He never expected to have a prince. It seems that this 4th emperor is not as foolish as he appears. Good guy, I used to be waiting for him here.